You're watching The Buck Stops here against the backdrop of fierce criticism from the BJP and a prolonged phase of increased tension along the line of control, including the recent killing of 5 Indian soldiers on the Indian side of the LOC. The Prime Minister has now confirmed his meeting with Nawaz Sharif in New York. High-level government sources say that there are no great expectations from the meeting, the first since Sharif became Prime Minister. But Sharif's many statements on the dialogue process with India since being elected were a key factor in the final decision which was made. For more on this, it's over to our group editor Barkha Dutt, who's on board the Prime Minister's special aircraft.
This meeting between the Prime Minister and Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, while expected, certainly had no guarantees or certainties as to the fact that it would definitely take place. The fact of the matter is that there has been an increased criticism from the opposition party, the BJP, which said that this was not the stage for both Prime Ministers to be meeting. It's also coming against the backdrop of increased tensions along the line of control. Initially, there was even some space left for ambiguity that were Nawaz Sharif to make a contentious reference to Jammu and Kashmir in his address to the United Nations General Assembly, which is of course coming a day before Manmohan Singh's own address to the Assembly, then even then all bets could be off and the meeting may not happen. But by committing himself in writing, on paper, in his own statement to the fact that this meeting will take place, Dr. Manmohan Singh has once again taken a political gamble with his Pakistan policy, a policy that has been strongly criticized by the opposition, sometimes even by leaders of his own party. But at the moment, he's going ahead with the meeting, he's committed to it in writing, and even though officials are playing down any great expectations from this meeting, also saying that it's far too early to talk about whether the invite that the Prime Minister made to Nawaz Sharif about visiting India will materialize into anything at all while Manmohan Singh is still in office.
Right. Barkha Dutt there on board the Prime Minister's special aircraft, travelling with the Prime Minister who's on his way to New York for the United Nations General Assembly session. So is talking to Pakistan now a risk that India can afford? That's the question that we're asking this evening. Joining us, Shashi Tharoor, the Minister of State for Human Resources Development, also a veteran diplomat. Also with us, Syed Tariq Pirzada, strategic affairs expert from Pakistan, and with us over here, Sheshadri Chari, the convener of the BJP's External Affairs Cell. Shashi, let me come to you first. 120 ceasefire violations in the last 2 months, including, I believe, 2 today. Why does India believe it's safe to be talking to Pakistan?
Well, is it safe not to talk to Pakistan, Vishnu? You know, you don't make peace with your friends. You make peace with your enemies or those who are conducting themselves as enemies. That's why it's in our interest. And what we have to ask ourselves is, what exactly is India's overriding interest? Do we gain at all from prolonged hostility on our border? If our overriding interest, as I believe it is our development, is our growth, is our prosperity, is our getting rid of poverty, then we don't need a distraction on the border. We don't need hostility on the border. What we need is tranquil friends on all our borders so that we can actually develop our country according to our lights.
Our friends aren't tranquil, Shashi. That's the problem. Our friends aren't tranquil. Pakistan is not tranquil.
But the reason we need to talk is precisely to achieve that tranquility. We don't have that tranquility, so we talk to them. If everything was fine, the talking would be routine. It wouldn't matter so much. See, the fact is that hostility is not conducive to investment, to growth, to development. And so it's in our interest, I believe, to engage Pakistan creatively, but to take it a step at a time. And that's exactly what I believe the Prime Minister is proposing to do.
Sheshadri Chari, what's wrong with what Shashi Tharoor has to say, that let's be pragmatic? What's the point in not talking? We need to talk, but keep it to a certain limit, a certain level, and that's something we decide.
No, I don't disagree with what Mr. Shashi Tharoor says. It's one thing to talk to our enemies and make them our friends. But this government in the last almost 9 years has been talking and not talking to our friends and making them enemies. What we did with Nepal, what we did with Bangladesh, what we did with Sri Lanka, what we did with Bhutan. Going by all these developments that have happened in the last 9 years, and I don't see, there is no agenda before the Prime Minister for his talks. Number one. Number two, even the meeting itself doesn't seem to be very sure.
No, it's sure. He's confirmed
on the sidelines.
That it's sure. It's sure on the sidelines. But
you know,
sources indicating that they may not even be a great
It's going to be
achievement.
on the sidelines.
Right, but it's a
going
start.
to be on the sidelines. It's going to be on the sidelines. Fine. It's also true that when the Prime Minister travels all the way to New York and then he is going to bump against his counterpart of Pakistan, I mean, he's not going to turn his face away and walk somewhere else. So he's going to talk. Fine. But there is no agenda as far as his talks are concerned, number one. The talks are not going to be structured, number two. And then what is he going to talk to the Pakistani Prime Minister vis-a-vis the LOC violations? We
can now confirm that he is going to be bringing up that issue. He is going to be bringing up the issue of common areas of economic concern. So these issues will come up. So it's not structured in the context of a sit-down kind of talk and structured talks over many days, but there are elements which will come into these talks.
No, but what is going to come
Vishnu,
out of it? I mean, it's all right. It's a
all right.
courtesy meeting.
Shashi Tharoor wants to come in. Go ahead.
Courtesy meeting.
Mr. Tharoor,
but I'm not optimistic about expecting too much even on MFN status. Even if you are going to talk only business and economics and nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with terrorism, what is Pakistan going to do as far as MFN
all right.
status is
Shashi,
concerned?
come in over here.
Okay, let me come in on this. I take some exception to what Mr. Chari has been saying. First, I don't think he knows any more than I do what the two prime ministers are going to talk about, but to suggest that our prime minister approaches any meeting with a foreign counterpart, let alone someone as important to us as our next door neighbor Pakistan, without some idea in his head of what he wishes to raise is preposterous. He has a very clear idea. There are a number of issues. We're not trying to solve all our problems overnight in one meeting in New York, but there are certainly substantive issues that will be discussed and they will sit down. There's no question of they're not sitting down to talk. The fact is, however, that Mr. Chari went on to make some astonishing allegations about other neighboring countries. We have excellent relations with Bhutan. We've managed a very difficult situation with Nepal well. And as far as Bangladesh is concerned, the only obstruction to giving our friendly neighbor in Bangladesh what they want has been the BJP's
Okay,
refusal
Shashi,
to
I'm interrupting
with
because
us
I want
in
to focus
Parliament.
on Pakistan and you know I need to go across
Sure,
to my guest
but he mentioned all of
in
that.
Pakistan, Mr. Pirzada. So the big concern among many in India is that there is a disconnect between what Nawaz Sharif may on the one hand be saying and what the army actually wants Pakistani foreign policy to be. Is that not a big concern where you come from, where you stand, sir?
First of all, what you have just said is contradicted by the recent developments. If you know, there was a major APC on a different issue within Pakistan, and that led to a major national consensus that yes, the government of Pakistan, backed by the political parties and the armed forces, they'll be engaging in dialogue with the Taliban. So you see, on all this propaganda or this perception, whatever you want to call in India, that all issues are influenced by a backdoor, manhandler called the Armed Forces of Pakistan, that is not correct. This is the second democratic regime in a row in Pakistan. I think all respect should be shown to it by not only from within, but also from outside.
So, Mr. Pirzada, would you agree then that this, whatever is happening on the line of control as far as attacks on Indian soldiers are concerned, is with the knowledge of the Pakistani government, because the Pakistani government and the army are so united? Would you agree that that's the case? Or do you believe there are elements in the Pakistani army which are destroying this peace process?
Since what you are raising right now is a contentious point between the two countries, Pakistan says that India is doing what India says is Pakistan doing. But let me get to the main issue of the day, which is the meeting of the two heads of state, so we can make some progress in this little time. Look, the issue is the two prime ministers want to make some progress. Of course, the forum at the United Nations is not a forum to go into the details. It's not a forum to work out issues like Kashmir or terrorism or all other issues. But they can, in a modest fashion, within the time frame of 20, 30 minutes or 40 minutes of 1 hour, simply touch upon certain issues that are causes of conflict between two countries, and then reach an agreement that let there be a formal, structured meeting between the heads of states in the days to come.